You owe us $1,000 for swimming. Are you kidding me right now? That was the first thought that went through my head when this crazy HOA woman handed me the most expensive violation in the history of our neighborhood just for taking a dip in my own family lake. But here's the thing she didn't know. Here's the little detail she missed while she was busy polishing her fake badge of authority. I was about to turn her biggest mistake into my greatest victory. By the end of this story, she wouldn't just be out of a job. She'd be the one effectively paying me $5,000 every single year. And trust me, that isn't even the craziest part. What happens next, the layers of this onion that we're about to peel back, will make you question everything you thought you knew about suburban power trips. This gets so wild that Hollywood couldn't write a better revenge story if they tried. So, if you're ready for a ride that goes from petty neighborhood drama to federal conspiracies, sit back, grab some popcorn, and let me tell you how my quiet life completely imploded on a Tuesday afternoon. My name is Ethan Cole. I'm 45 years old, a high school history teacher by trade, which means I have a lot of patience, but a very low tolerance for nonsense. I just inherited my grandmother's lakefront cottage about 18 months prior. It was this beautiful, slightly rundown place that had been in my family since 1923, long before the cookie-cutter subdivision known as Lakeside Manor sprang up around it like weeds. I wasn't rich. I wasn't looking for trouble. I just wanted to grade papers and swim in the water that had taught me how to float when I was 6 years old. It was March, a Tuesday, and I had just come home from the kind of parent-teacher conferences that make you question the future of humanity. I was drained, my head was throbbing, and all I wanted was the cold, clarifying shock of the lake water to wash the day away. I dove in, swam my laps, and felt that tension finally leaving my shoulders. But when I surfaced, wiping the water from my eyes, I saw a silhouette standing on my dock. It was Linda Sterling. Now, I'd seen Linda around. She was the newly elected HOA president, a woman who treated the neighborhood bylaws like they were the Ten Commandments, and she was Moses coming down from the mountain. She was dressed in this immaculate white tracksuit that had clearly never seen a gym. Her hair was sprayed into a helmet of perfection, and she was clutching a clipboard like a weapon. "Stop right there," she barked, her voice cutting through the peaceful sound of the water lapping against the wood. "You are contaminating the community watershed." I'm treading water, shivering a little now, looking up at her like she's speaking a foreign language. "Excuse me," I said, wiping my face. "Linda, this is my private lake. I have the deed. I'm just swimming." She smiled, but it wasn't a friendly smile. It was the kind of smile a shark gives a seal right before dinner. "Actually, Mr. Cole, per the new HOA membership agreement, all contiguous water features are classified as community property. You are currently violating Environmental Protection Code 15C, unauthorized swimming activities causing chemical runoff into the watershed system." She held up this little plastic device that was beeping and flashing red lights, looking very official and very expensive. "That's a $1,000 fine for the environmental impact assessment," she said, scribbling furiously on a pink citation slip, "plus $150 daily accumulation until certified environmental compliance is achieved. $1,000 for swimming." I pulled myself up onto the dock, dripping wet, towel wrapped around me, trying to process the insanity. I looked at her, really looked at her, and I noticed something odd. For a woman wearing a tracksuit that probably cost more than my first car and carrying a designer purse, there was a tiny plastic tag dangling from the zipper of her bag. A pawn shop tag. It was barely visible, but I saw it. Just then, her phone buzzed. She glanced at the screen, her eyes widened with legitimate fear, and she hit decline so fast her thumb blurred. "Just pay the fine, Mr. Cole," she said, her voice tight, losing that superior edge for just a second. Some people think property ownership gives them the right to pollute, but we've had incidents in the past with irresponsible pet owners, and we won't let it happen again. She turned and marched off my dock, the heels of her sneakers squeaking on the wood. But I stood there frozen, cold water dripping down my back, because of what she said. Irresponsible pet owners. 3 years ago, my dog, Buster, a golden retriever who was basically my shadow, died suddenly. The vet said it was acute chemical poisoning. We never found out where it came from. I spent $4,000 trying to save him, holding his paw while he seized and cried in pain until his heart finally gave out. It broke me. And now, hearing Linda Sterling talk about past incidents, With a cruelty that felt personal, something inside me snapped. That night, I didn't sleep. My history teacher brain went into research mode. I dug through old community newsletters, county records, anything I could find. And around 3 a.m., I found it. A buried article from the local Gazette, 3 years old. 3 dogs die from mysterious chemical runoff following HOA beautification project. And right there in the article was a quote from the head of the beautification committee at the time, Linda Sterling. Property maintenance standards must be upheld regardless of pet owner negligence, she had told the reporter. My hands started shaking. She did it. She had authorized some kind of chemical dump or treatment that killed Buster, and she knew it. She called it negligence. I called it murder. I picked up the phone right then and there and called Marcus Holloway. Mac and I grew up together. He was my dad's partner on the force for 15 years and had been looking out for me since my dad passed. It was late, but Mac picked up on the second ring. Ethan, he answered, his voice thick with sleep. Everything okay? Linda Sterling killed Buster, I said, my voice trembling with a rage I hadn't felt in years. And now she's coming for me. Mac didn't ask if I was crazy. He didn't tell me to go to sleep. He just said, I'm coming over first thing in the morning. By the time Mac sat at my kitchen table the next day, the sun was up, but the world looked darker. He tossed a manila folder onto the table. I ran a background check on your friend Linda, Mac said, taking a sip of black coffee. Ethan, she's not just a power-tripping Karen. She's drowning. He opened the file. $75,000 in gambling debt at the tribal casino. $28,000 in medical bills left over from her late husband. And here's the kicker. Her house is in active foreclosure. She has 90 days to come up with 52 grand or she's on the street. She's been hitting the wealthier houses in the neighborhood with bogus fines for months now. She's using the HOA as her personal piggy bank. It all made sense. The pawn shop tag, the panicked look at her phone, the ridiculous $1,000 fine. She was desperate, and desperate people are dangerous. But just how dangerous? I found out the next morning. I woke up early, around 6:30, to get some grading done, and I saw movement by my back fence. It was Linda. She wasn't holding a clipboard this time. She was on her phone, pacing back and forth, looking frantic. I cracked my window just an inch to hear. The teacher won't be a problem much longer, she was hissing into the phone. Yes, I know exactly how to handle people like him. Just get it done by Friday. She hung up, looked toward my house, saw me in the window, and gave me a wave. But it wasn't a neighborly wave. It was a promise. Just get it done by Friday. What did that mean? Was she going to plant drugs? Burn the house down? The harassment escalated immediately. That afternoon, I got a $400 fine for noise pollution because of splashing. The next day, $554 unauthorized dock modifications because I replaced a rotten board. By the end of the week, I was looking at over $3,000 in fines for things that weren't even real. And I wasn't alone. I started talking to my neighbors. Old Man Miller, who's lived here since the 70s and fixes everyone's lawnmowers, told me she hit him for $1,100 because he parked his work truck in his own driveway. Mrs. Higgins got fined $800 for a holiday wreath. Linda was systematically looting the neighborhood. But we needed proof. Hard proof. And that's when Sarah Jenkins knocked on my door. Sarah was the HOA treasurer, a single mom, terrified of her own shadow. She looked like she hadn't slept in a week. I know you're fighting her, she whispered, standing on my porch in the dark. I found the records. We sat in my living room with the curtains drawn. Sarah's hands were shaking as she laid out the bank statements. She created a shell company called Environmental Solutions LLC, Sarah explained. She's been billing the HOA for services that never happened. $38,000 in the last 18 months. Ethan, she took the money for the new playground equipment. She took it all. Why haven't you gone to the police? I asked gently. She threatened me, Sarah said, tears welling up. She told me that people who ask questions lose their jobs. I need the health insurance for my daughter. I was scared, seeing Sarah terrified, thinking about Buster dying in pain, looking at the fake fines piled on my table. I realized this wasn't just about an annoying neighbor anymore. This was war. Mac came up with the plan. We need her to confess, he told me. Gamblers are addicts. When they think they're winning, they get sloppy. They get arrogant. You need to call her. Tell her you surrender. Tell her you want to settle privately. It was a risk, but I made the call. I put on my best defeated teacher voice. Linda, I can't afford these lawyers. I just want this to stop. Can we work something out? You could practically hear her salivating over the phone. Finally seeing reason, Mr. Cole. Come over tomorrow evening. We can discuss a settlement. I went to her house wired for sound. Mac was parked down the street in an unmarked van. Walking up to Linda's front door was surreal. Her lawn was perfect, the hydrangeas were blooming, but right there in the corner of the front window, barely hidden by a curtain, was the orange sticker of a foreclosure notice. She let me in, acting like the gracious hostess, documents spread out on her dining room table next to that fake environmental testing device. I'm glad we can handle this like adults, she said, sliding a paper toward me. Since your property is the source of the contamination, a 50-50 shared access agreement seems fair. The HOA, meaning me, would control access rights to the lake. She wanted to steal my inheritance. She wanted half the lake. I forced myself to stay calm. I keep thinking about my dog, Buster, I said, looking her dead in the eye. You were in charge of the environmental stuff back then too, right? Her mask slipped. Just for a second, the polite neighbor vanished, and something cold and ugly looked out from behind her eyes. That dog was a nuisance, she snapped. He contaminated the water. Irresponsible owners endanger the whole community. I had to use extreme measures to protect our standards. Sometimes you have to cull the weak to save the property values. There it was. She admitted it. Extreme measures. Cull the weak. She murdered my dog and justified it as property management. And the money? I pressed, pushing my luck. The playground funds? Was that for property values too? She stood up, her face red. I found creative funding. I deserve that money for everything I put up with. You people have no idea. Bam. The front door flew open. Max stepped in, badge raised. Linda Sterling, you're under arrest for fraud, embezzlement, and criminal harassment. For a second, she just stared at him. Then she started screaming. Screaming about entrapment, about conspiracies, about how we didn't understand who she was working for. As Mac clicked the handcuffs on her, I felt a wave of relief so strong I almost fell over. But as they led her out to the squad car, I looked out the window. Across the street, a black sedan with tinted windows was idling. As soon as the police car pulled away, the sedan slowly followed. It wasn't a neighbor. It wasn't the police. And the hair on the back of my neck stood up. We thought arresting her was the end. We were wrong. The emergency HOA meeting the next night was a bloodbath. 78 residents packed into the community center. The room was split right down the middle. Half the room knew Linda was a crook. The other half, led by this older lady named Helen, thought Linda was a saint being persecuted by a vindictive newcomer, me. We are here to decide if we destroy an innocent woman's life. Helen shouted. She kept our property values up. She helped me with my groceries. The tension was thick enough to choke on. Then, Sarah stood up. Brave, terrified Sarah. She walked to the front of the room with a banker's box. She didn't shout. She just started passing out copies of the bank statements. She stole the playground money, Sarah said, her voice trembling but clear. She spent $38,000 at the casino. Here are the withdrawal slips. Here are the fake invoices. The room went silent. You could see the realization hitting people like a physical blow. The parents who had been waiting for that playground, the retirees on fixed incomes. The betrayal was absolute. We held the vote to remove her. It passed, but barely, 41 to 37. That scared me. Even with the proof, nearly half the neighborhood was so afraid of change, or so brainwashed, they voted to keep a criminal in charge. And then came the kicker. The HOA was broke. We had $1,200 in the account. We couldn't pay the electric bill for the streetlights, let alone legal fees. That's when I played my card. I'll contribute $5,000 annually, I announced to the stunned room, for community lake access rights. It's below market rate, but it keeps us solvent. The irony was delicious. Linda tried to steal my lake for free. Now, the community was paying me to use it, and I was using that money to save the organization she destroyed. But Linda wasn't done. She made bail the next day, $35,000 cash. Where does a bankrupt woman get that kind of cash? The harassment turned into terror. My car got keyed. Someone took a baseball bat to my mailbox. I got suspended from my teaching job because 12 anonymous parents filed complaints calling me unstable. I was sitting at home, suspended, watching my savings dwindle when the break-in started. Not smash and grabs. Surgical entries. I'd come home and find files moved. Drawers open just an inch. They weren't stealing, they were searching. Then came the night of the frogman. It was 3 a.m. I woke up to a sound at my back door. I grabbed the baseball bat I kept by the bed now and crept downstairs. I saw a shadow move across the living room. I shouted, flipping on the light. The figure bolted, not out the front door, but out the back slider, straight toward the lake. By the time I got to the porch, they were gone. But there, on my deck, were wet, muddy footprints. Flippers. Someone in full scuba gear had come out of my lake, broken into my house, and vanished back into the water. My neighbor Old Man Miller has security cameras. The next day, he showed me the footage. A figure in professional dive gear emerging from the black water like a Navy SEAL, spending 20 minutes inside, and slipping back in. That ain't a burglar, son, Miller told me, his face grim. That's a pro. What the hell do you have in that lake? The trial was a circus. Linda's lawyer was slick, expensive. Way too expensive for a woman in foreclosure. He played the jury like a fiddle. A grieving widow, he called her. A victim of a vindictive man. Linda cried on the stand, talking about her husband, apologizing for the accidental death of my dog. It was a performance worthy of an Oscar. I thought we were going to lose. I really did. But then Sarah took the stand with the financial records. You can fake tears, but you can't fake math. The jury convicted her on all counts. For years in state prison. As the bailiffs led her away, she screamed at me. You don't know what you've done. You don't understand what you're dealing with. And then I saw it. Her lawyer was talking to a man in the back of the courtroom. A man in a tailored suit, cold eyes, taking pictures of me with his phone. As I walked past, I heard the lawyer say, "The teacher is a problem. We'll handle it. We'll handle it." That phrase haunted me. But life has a funny way of pivoting. I was out of a job, but I had a story. I started speaking at local community centers about HOA corruption, then regional conferences. People were desperate for this information. I launched an online course, The Cole Method, Fighting Community Corruption. It exploded. Within 6 months, I was making more in a month than I used to make in a year teaching history. I wrote a book. I started consulting. And with the extra money, I bought Linda's foreclosed house at auction, turned it into a luxury rental. The Karen's Castle experience. It was petty, maybe, but it felt like justice. But the surveillance didn't stop. Private investigators were following me. I hired Mac full-time as my security. He found bugs in my office, trackers on my car. Someone with deep pockets thinks you have something they own, Mac told me. This isn't about HOA dues anymore, Ethan. This is corporate espionage. 2 years later, Linda called me from prison. Her voice was broken. I need to tell you the truth, she whispered. It wasn't just the gambling. They came to me, men in suits. They paid off my debts. They told me if I didn't force you to sell, they'd hurt my daughter. That's why I poisoned the dog. It was a warning. Who? I asked, gripping the phone. Who are they? I don't know their names, she sobbed. But they said there's something under your lake. Something worth killing for. Mineral rights. Rare earth deposits. Millions of dollars, Ethan. And they aren't going to stop. I dropped the phone. It all clicked. The scuba diver. The surveys disguised as environmental checks. The high-priced lawyers. They didn't want the cottage. They wanted what was beneath it. Mac took this to the FBI. Turns out, there was a massive investigation into a Nevada-based mining consortium that had been using corrupt local officials to seize land across 3 states. Linda was just a pawn. The feds swept in. Arrests were made. Executives in high-rise offices were dragged out in handcuffs. Linda's testimony, and the letter she sent me confessing everything, buried them. I stood on my dock the day of my wedding. I married Judy, a woman I met at one of my seminars, right there by the water. The sun was setting, turning the lake into liquid gold. We used the restitution money from Linda to pay for the party. The whole neighborhood was there, even Helen, who apologized to me with tears in her eyes. I looked out at the water. It was peaceful, but I knew the truth now. Beneath that calm surface lay a fortune that had almost cost me my life, and had certainly cost Linda hers. Linda is out now. She works at a discount grocery store 3 towns over. She looks old, tired. I saw her once. She looked right through me like a ghost. I didn't feel angry anymore. I just felt relief. I went from a teacher being bullied for swimming to a man who took down a criminal enterprise and changed his entire life. I make 25 grand a speech now, teaching people how to fight back. But here's the thing that keeps me up at night. The mining consortium is gone, sure. But the minerals? they're still down there. And every now and then, when the moon is new and the lake is dark, I see a ripple in the water. Maybe it's just a fish. Or maybe, just maybe, someone else is watching, waiting for their turn to try and take what's mine. So, tell me in the comments, what would you do? Would you sell the land and take the money? Or would you hold the line, knowing what's buried in the deep? This is Ethan Cole, reminding you that sometimes the biggest wars start in the smallest neighborhoods. Keep your eyes open and never let them see you blink.